Good morning, Abba. Now we split it into two rooms, and this is a pink room. And I am so happy because here with me is Arek Benedykt. Good morning, Arek.
Good morning, Eva. Good morning, everyone. It's nice
Arek.
to almost see you.
Yes, almost see you. We can see each other. Unfortunately, we can't see you, but I feel that you are on the other side of the screen. And also you're in the Slack. In the main pink channel, please leave your questions, your comments. We will get to this in the meantime and just after Arek's talk. So, the person of honor. Arek, you are a developer by heart and profession, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's correct.
And you are the person that started to work with Polish Odra, and you have a surprise for us. Could you please show it?
Yeah, I do actually have a surprise. An application written for Odra. So that's how the code used to look like. I don't know if you can see it properly. It has some holes in it, but yeah, that's legit application. And one other interesting thing in here, that's actually a piece of memory from Odra. It's something like 16K, 16 kilobytes, because bytes in there are a little bit different from what we know today, and it weighed over 1 kilo, exactly to be exact, 1.6. So yeah, that's how it used to look like when I was like super small.
Wonderful. So that was the sneak peek into the beginning of your professional journey. Right now, Arek is engineering manager at Pitney Bowes, and he will talk with, I can say, the sarcasm, a challenge about developers. The title of your talk is Why Developers Do Not Need Your Agile. Do they really do not need Agile?
Exactly.
Exactly. Okay.
They don't need your Agile. And by your Agile, I mean like the Agile we try to introduce to the market. So
okay. In such case, I will step back and the stage is yours. Enjoy. Arek Benedykt right now.
Thank you for introduction. And yeah, as Eva said, we'll try to think like why developers do not need your Agile. Before we go any deeper, just one remark. The following content may harm your feelings. So please be advised, don't take it personally. Take it as something to think about. Use it as a canvas for your reflections, for your thoughts. Take a peek outside of your bubble and let's try to do this Agile thing a bit better, because, well, there are some issues, and there are some issues with it, and we'll cover those. And before we go deeper into the talk, let me share some origins of this talk, because actually the origins has emerged here on this conference, not exactly here in this place, but during ABE, something like 2 or 3 years ago. Back then, when we used to, travel to the conferences and meet people, drink coffee, have a chat, and not talk to the laptop. So back in the pre-COVID days. Hopefully you do remember, and hopefully we'll have a chance to meet live, right? One day. Anyways, at this conference, I thought like, okay, we talk about Agile, we talk about different ways of work, and there should be a lot of developers there, right? Because we're covering topics that are super important for them. And I got a feeling that there are hardly no developers. And I was super surprised. And I was super surprised because developers used to talk about Agile a lot during the developer conferences. Something like 10 years ago, probably half of the topics were actually covering different aspects of Agile. How to do proper code reviews, how to work in Scrum, how to make it all work. And then at some point, all of that has vanished. And I was super surprised, like, why it has vanished. Did the developers drop off all this agility thing, or they move forward? Like, what has happened? And then I went to this ABE conference, and there were no developers. And that actually got me thinking, like, why? What has happened? What went wrong, right? So before we go any further, quick question. How many lines of code you wrote in past 7 days? Write it in a chat window, write it in a Slack channel, and think about how many lines of code you wrote past 7 days. Do you have any answers, Eva?
Not yet.
Not yet. So why? Are we lagging a lot, or maybe you didn't wrote any code at all? If, well, probably most of you didn't wrote any code at all during past 7 days, maybe 1 month. If that's the case, then I'm in the right place. Because again, we probably have a lot of people from business, we'll have a lot of people, Agile coaches, Scrum Masters, product owners, but we do not have developers. So I would like you to show how Agile looks in the eyes of developers, the people who actually write code, deliver code, test, and make products. So quite often, for them, Agile equals Scrum. We all know that it's a bit of a stretch, right? But what developers hear, when they hear Agile, they think Scrum. When they hear Scrum, they think Agile. We know that that's not the case, but that's the reality. While preparing for this presentation, I actually asked a couple of guys who work in the industry, and they've been working in this industry for ages, like a lot of years. So they've got huge experience. They've worked with numerous teams, and here are some thoughts they care to share with me. We do Scrum, but we don't do Agile. Like, what the hell? How this can happen, right? Well, we do only dailies. We do grooming only if something gets really fucked up. Is it the way we want to work? Probably not. No one can comprehend Agile or even has time for it. That's the sentence from one company where they were explicitly saying that they're not doing Agile because they simply don't have time for it. Requirements, well, that's in the words of developer. Requirements, we simply get an email, what has to be in the next release. Sometimes we feel like we're treated like monkeys, where mostly we're the intelligent ones, right? Scrum Masters, well, that's a happy shithole for the ones who do not understand IT. Those are the things that were, shared with me from the eyes of developers. Scrum Masters, well, they know Scrum Guide, but they don't understand it. And perfect description of it. Well, it's one thing to learn a poem, and the other thing is to understand it. There's more. If a team has a coupling with 50 other teams, you can do nothing. That's actually, those sentences and stuff on this screen comes from a guy who used to work in one of the biggest e-commerce platform here in Poland. Chaos that looks like Agile. Yeah, we're not Agile, we've got simply chaos, right? I've learned one product owner to change labels and fonts and do git commit, and it has speeded up the development and stopped the stupid ping pong. Like, for a couple of sprints, they got this ping pong game where product owner was saying that you got to change this label and that label and that label. And, all the 15K programmers had to, change labels and change colors. They were feeling pretty fed up with that, and, they learned the product owner. But that's the thing they have to deal with on daily basis. Most companies do want fixed functionality on time within the budget. We all know that it is going to work, right? We've learned that triangle, like fixed functionality, fixed time, fixed budget, and, pick 3. Not exactly. We know that, right? But there are still businesses that do not understand that it will not work, right? Architecture dies in Scrum because features. Businesses tend to push features and they don't think about architecture. And it's quite reasonable because business is not about thinking about software architecture, right? Developers should. But if the developers are pressed to do features, then they do not have time to work on architecture. And that's what I've heard, that, you know, architecture dies in Scrum. Scrum looks like squeezing waterfall into 2 weeks. I think that's the essence of Scrum in many companies. Business want to deliver but have no idea how. IT wants to decide but cannot. It doesn't sound like a place where I would like to work, right? Where I cannot decide about anything. There's more experiments. In Agile, we do experiments from time to time. But what I have learned lately is that many, not all, but many businesses do not want failures. Each experiment, each spike creates a new little monster that has to be supported, and it has to be supported for years and years. Eventually, it ends up in supporting team in some sort of Kanban thing, because, you know, Scrum is not the tool for it. So we'll use Kanban and we're still Agile, but we gotta, you know, feed this little monster, and, you know, no one wants to work there. Developers are very far from real users. That's super common, really. Many times, developers do not see their real users. How it reflects to Agile Manifesto? I don't know. Developers do not talk about Agile because they cannot work like this. And that's the actual answer for why there are no Agile talks at the developer conferences, because they feel they cannot work like this. Often, Scrum Master is not for the team, but for the business to make things go faster. We all know that it's not the real purpose of Scrum Master, but that's the view of developers who have to deal with so-called Agile in their own companies, right? Now, few more nails to the coffin. It's just a consulting bullshit. Yeah, actually, in many cases it is, if it's done not properly, right? So, you know, let's think about it and do it better. Why Agile doesn't work? Well, because programmers are bad. They do not understand it. That's what I've heard. Since a couple of years, and that's actually a very interesting reflection. Since a couple of years, Scrum Masters are not the people who understand the technology, but people from HR, psychology, and, you know, so on. It makes some sense because it's easy path to start work in IT, right? To earn some big money, and, you know, I don't understand the technology, but still I want to work there. So what's the lowest hanging fruit? Well, I'm going to be a Scrum Master, right? We all know that it is far from truth, right? Scrum Master's job isn't as easy as it looks, but, you know, that's the perception of developers. Some other things, team building crap, building Lego bricks. That has absolutely nothing to do with real day-to-day development. Doesn't look like promising land to work in, right? Now, a couple of insights from one of the projects that you did hear within probably last 2 months. I'm not going to name the project itself or the companies because of, well, I don't want to harm people who had to work with it, but I'm sure you've read it in numerous newspapers and portals. They were saying that they do Agile, and they are doing on daily basis. And there are 70 people on daily meeting. 70 people on daily meeting from 10 different subcontractors. It sounds like, you know, a recipe for a successful project, right? Because there were 70 people on every daily meeting, they've cut down the daily only to inform about problems. Sounds like it's going to work, right? They had no time for other so-called ceremonies. The project itself was scheduled for 6 months, and developers has estimated that it should take at least 12 months. And we all know how developers are good in estimating, right? So probably, realistically, it's supposed to last at least a year and a half, maybe 2 years, right? But someone thought like, okay, here's your scope, here's the time frame, 6 months. Don't ask where we took it, and good luck. The funny thing is that key developers has left the project before it was finished, right? And last, probably but not least, but actually those are my personal experiences, business versus development, fixed time, fixed scope, fixed quality. So, it's going to work. But we wanted to work in agile environment. So when we got a project with fixed time, scope, and required quality, we heard that, well, everything is set. So now you can do all those, your sprints, or how do you call those? And you can do your agile because you want to work in agile environment. So yeah, do those sprints. We're happy with it. Good luck. Yeah, sure. That's the essence of agile, right? And of course, that actually backfired on us because we were working in agile way. The scope may increase. The increase in here is quite crucial, not change, increase, because that's obvious, right? We're agile, so we can add more and more stuff, and you will magically do it. And the last sentence actually comes from one of the banks here in Poland. What I've heard that, well, they've got a lot of ideas. Business comes with huge amounts of ideas, but the developers cannot build everything. So now we do need agile so they can actually build everything we think of. Yeah, another recipe for success, right? So can software be done in different ways? Yeah, sure. Let me introduce to some project that is 30 years old. This year, it finished its 30th year, and it is used all over the world. Plural means like not only on Earth, because it's also used in space in probably at least one of the planets in our solar system. It is still actively developed as we speak. Right now, people are writing code and maintaining it and developing it. It's something like over 10,000 developers from over 1,000 companies. They do not have product owners. They do not have Scrum Masters. They do not have Agile, and they do not use Jira. How is it even possible that it's working? Well, it's driven by 100% pure motivation. And you probably heard about it. It's simply Linux. Probably most of you right now, somewhere on your desk, somewhere around you, have a phone that is actually working on some sort of Linux, right? Some version of Linux. Yeah, you can do it without Agile, right? So, Agile is a bad stuff? Well, no. The funny thing in all this talk is that developers are agile by their nature. If you think about how developers work, they simply write code. They actually first they read requirements, they read code, then they write some more code, they execute, they check the results, and they repeat it again and again and again, like hundred times a day, right? Looks like some, inspect and adapt loop, right? That's how we rewire, that's how we build. That's the only way you can actually develop software. Write and check if it's working. If it works, you move forward. If it doesn't work, move one step back and repeat the process. That's super agile. So what do we have to do to make all this agile work? Well, we simply must kill the myths. And by kill the myth, I mean, let's think about stand-ups, right? In many companies, people do stand-ups, but actually the stand-up is something you see on your right or on your left. I don't know if it's, if you can see properly, but anyways, stand-up is just a comedy. We do daily, and we do daily to communicate with ourselves. And it doesn't necessarily mean that we do have to, schedule it on daily basis, because it is actually impossible to write code with more than one person without talking to each other, right? The other thing, sprint. I consider sprint as the worst name ever. Why? Well, let me just move the window a little bit. If you look into Agile Manifesto, the other side of Agile Manifesto, the so-called 12 principles of Agile, you can find there that it is said Agile promotes sustainable development. Sponsor develops as yada, 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 should be able to maintain a constant pace indefinitely. Constant pace. If we think about sprint itself, let's consider Usain Bolt, so-called fastest man on earth. I'm not sure if he's still a world record holder, but anyways, Usain Bolt's top speed is something like 37 kilometers per hour. And he can sustain this speed for something like 100 meters. If we consider the other super sportsmen, like super X-Men, Elite Kipchoge, I have absolutely no idea how to pronounce it properly, but please do find this guy and watch a documentary about breaking world record on marathon. But anyways, he ran a marathon under 2 hours. So his average speed is 21 kilometers. If you're thinking about creating software in sprints and you want to push as fast as possible, then you will end up with 1, 2, or 3 good sprints, and then everything will collapse. While we're trying to build software, while we try to build products, we want to maintain a constant pace indefinitely. We cannot run super, super fast. We gotta run slow. If you're an X-Man like Usain Bolt or Elite, then 37 or 21 kilometers per hour, that's good for you. But if you're like regular Joe like me or all the other developers, it's probably 10 kilometers per hour, right? But within 10 kilometers per hour, you can actually run not only marathon, you can run ultra marathon, like 50 kilometers, 100 kilometers, 200 kilometers. That's possible. But you cannot, push yourself to the limit on the very first meters. Now, Jira versus Agile, right? Some companies do want to consider themselves as Agile because they're using Jira. That's absolutely not the case. And if we look from the developer perspective, if you're creating new branch, it goes like git branch -b, the name of the branch, done. We have a new branch in your code repository. But if we're forced to use Jira, then we gotta open Jira, probably update your Chrome or other browser, log in. If you're working in a corporate environment, you probably use F2A or any other dongle or whatever. You gotta find the ticket and then in that ticket create new branch. It's a bit pointless, right? Jira is not Agile, right? Further, let's move forward. Code reviews. Well, code review is a cultural thing. Let me share some video about it. It should load up, and you probably, you should see it right now. But anyways, if we think about, sorry for the bad word, but anyways, I'll share the presentation and there's going to be a link so you can, watch it in proper way. This is actually a comedy channel, but it shows the problems with code review. If we do not have a proper culture for code review, it looks like this. Juniors write some code and they don't understand it. They, send it to code review. Now, what does the seniors do? What do you think?
I have no idea what I'm reading.
Yeah, I have no idea what I'm reading. They accept it. Approve, done, right? That's the reality of doing code reviews when we do not have a culture, if it's not a cultural thing. If it's a culture in our organization, then we will do code review thoroughly enough to find any bugs. If we don't, well, we've got a problem. What kind of problem? You probably heard that Facebook went down a few days ago, like 3-4 days ago. And when I started to digging what has happened, it turns out that some BGP rules went, bonkers, right? And you can see it on Google Trends, like people started Googling what the hell is BGP, but that's, not the case. For this talk, the case is that I found probably an insider conversation. I cannot validate if it's true or not, but inside the insider conversation that says it was a code review bot. So they are doing code review, but there is some sort of bot that makes it automatic, right? Probably not the best thing to do. We know how it ended up, right? Now, definition of done. If we want to go with Scrum, of course we need to have a definition of done, but bear in mind that we cannot enforce it if the team cannot deliver it. We cannot enforce it if the team doesn't know about its existence. And there are companies that do have definition of done, and teams do not know that it exists. They don't know where is it. They don't, go by the definition of done. You cannot enforce it if the team didn't create it. If some business analytics person has created a definition of done, well, that's their definition of done, not the team's. If we do not have a culture of going through definition of done and really delivering and believing in it, it's not going to work. If you want to make it work, we got to work on a culture of creating definition of done and working towards it. Now, there's more. Unit tests. Years and years ago, developers were talking about unit tests, how to do them properly, how to create them, yada, yada, yada. But there are still, to this day, there are many companies that do not believe in unit tests. And you know what? In some case, it's kind of okay. But let's make it clear. We're writing or we're not writing unit tests. You cannot have a KPI on unit tests, on the amount of unit tests, right? Because it's not gonna work. The only way for unit tests to work is actually if the team believes in it. If the team believes in it, it will simply work. Now, if we're talking about unit tests, there is this tool called code coverage. And bear in mind, it's just a tool. It's not a tool for business. It's not a tool for someone from management. It's a tool for developers, like the IDE, all IntelliSense and wizards and stuff. That's just a hammer, right? If we combine code coverage with a KPI, we are on a track to some, bad things. And they will eventually happen. Why? Because we think we have a good code coverage. Whereas if the team does not believe in it, they will simply generate code coverage. They will give you crap data. And while I'm doing sometimes training on unit tests, I always show everyone how to generate code coverage, fake code coverage, because it's super easy. You simply write some code, cover it with try-catch clause, and make sure the test does not fail. It's absolutely super easy, and it will generate as much code coverage as you want. But it's not the way that we want to work, right? We need a culture of writing good tests. We want to use code coverage as a tool for showing us places, okay, we're missing some tests here and there, but it's just a tool, right? It's not for business. So anyway, you see, all things I've spoke with, all the things I spoke about actually boils down to this sentence: culture begins with beliefs and finds expression in behaviors, right? That's actually how we should introduce Agile. We should start with the beliefs, and from that we've got expression in behaviors. Now, if we go back in history, like to the very origins of Agile, we for sure get down to Agile Manifesto. And if we think about who wrote that, right? Well, software developers has wrote that, right? If you Google out every person of original people who has created Agile Manifesto, they're all software developers with huge amount of experience, right? That should ring a bell, right? And last but not least, Agile architecture. From time to time, I hear like, okay, what is the best Agile architecture? How to do Agile architecture? Guess what? There is no such thing as Agile architecture. There is no one architecture that can support Agile. There is no silver bullet. Architecture must evolve. And if we look into Agile Manifesto, but not the marketing bullshit on the front side, but the essence that is actually on the back side, those guys wrote there, the best architectures, requirement, and design emerge from self-organizing teams. They emerge. You cannot design it up front. If you try to design it up front, you're trying to squeeze the waterfall into sprints or smaller chunks of time, and we know that it doesn't work. If you consider those 12 principles, the engine of whole Agile, we'll find super interesting sentence that says continuous attention to technical excellence. Let me say it again, to technical excellence and good design enhance agility. You want to be more agile? Focus on technical excellence. Focus on good design. What does it mean, good design? Well, it changes with your project. On the very beginning, you do not need super good design. You just want to make it work, like have 3 features stuck together and make it work. But as the product grows, as new requirements emerge, you have to adapt with the architecture. That's the way to go. And there is one last thing that we tend to forget, and it's also written in the 12 principles of Agile Manifesto. Simplicity, the art of maximizing the work, maximizing the amount of work not done is essential. Maximizing the amount of work not done. So it is more important not to do useless things. That's the essence. And that's actually a quote from those 12 principles that are written on the backside. Your homework for today, find Agile Manifesto. Don't, read again the front side. Read the 12 principles that are written on the backside, because there is the essence. Now, what we can do personally to make it all better, like for whole industry? Well, take a break, rethink this talk, because it's only my point of view. It's point of view from the eyes of a developer. But rethink it. Think if you're doing the real Agile, where we can, change it, where we can, do something better. Empower software engineers, because they've got huge knowledge and they're full of ideas how to make things better. Listen to software engineers. Understand the development process. And by understand, I mean, try to build something by yourself. Learn, use Scratch, use Node-RED, App Inventor, whatever thing. These days, you don't have to learn to code to create a product, to create something useful. You can use almost any no-code tool and try to build something. Build it, feel the pain of development, then try to add some features. Add one feature, add another one. Try to maintain this project for 2-3 months, and you will you will have better understanding of how this process looks on the developer's end, right? And check who is really involved in development process. And by development process in here, so-called development process, I mean like from the very beginning to the very end. Because if only so-called business is involved in it and the developers are 1%, then something is wrong. If it's other way around, probably there's also something wrong. We need to find the balance between two of them, between two of those worlds. We actually need business and developers work together, right? Now, from company-wide, what we can do? We can find people who are willing to write tests, who are willing to understand the architecture, who are willing to understand the Agile, who are self-driven, like those guys creating Linux who do not need any external help. They're driven purely by passion. Let's find, in your company, find those people who are self-driven and try to empower them. Because when they start to work and they start to show off their work the Agile way, the others will eventually follow them. And that's actually a recipe for success. So thank you very much. That's pretty much everything I prepared for you. And
we have 15 minutes for questions.
Exactly. If you've got any questions, that's
a lot of questions, a lot of comments. You were challenging, you were controversial. So regarding the question at one of the last slides, what we could do personally, it is a comment. I will try to show this comment. A colleague said, I'm wondering if this talk is more than just explaining why Agile is natural to developers and we don't have to do nothing. Could you please comment on that?
I'm not sure if I get this correctly, but can the author of the question elaborate a little bit?
I'm not sure I can do it technically, but maybe another one which is connected will help you, because it was a question about agility right now and agility 10 years ago. We mentioned ODRA. We mentioned beginning of your professional journey, and Agile was sexy, was new, so we need to learn this. And right now, Agile is natural, so maybe there is no need to learn it.
Well, I strongly believe that it is need to be learned, because until today, there are companies that are doing it incorrectly. There are companies that try to, think about product, like finished product, and now throw it to developers and make it happen, right? And I don't think it's the way to go, right? If you look into startup community, they think about product, they try to build it with no-code tools or anything, right? Build it, validate it, and then maybe pivot to one way or the other, and then try to work the way to the final product. And that's pretty much the essence of agility, right? Whereas many companies do it the old-fashioned way, right? They're focused on the product in the very beginning. They know they think they know what the product should look like. And now, use those agile techniques and yellow paper, yellow cards and sticky notes to make it happen, right? So it's happening these days. Therefore, we still have to learn how to do it.
So we need still to learn. That's good. And you mentioned technical excellence. We have at least 2 questions regarding that. So the first one is how to encourage the team to build in the test pyramid into the software they develop.
Well, I would start by asking why they do not test, because there are various reasons. And each team has different reasons not to test. Sometimes they simply don't know how to test. Sometimes they're pretty much lazy. And by lazy, I mean, exactly the thing that I had to face myself when I was learning unit tests, when I was learning writing tests. I'm old enough to say that when I was learning programming, no one used to speak about unit tests, right? Unit tests weren't invented yet. And I knew that I gotta, write code, execute the application, try to run it, see how it works, and then write code again and again and again. It works. But if you try to work with unit tests, and specifically if you try to start by writing tests, you got to unlearn the old techniques. You got to unlearn the old techniques and gain the new habits of writing the test and then writing production code. And then, you start your journey with tests, right? And the funny thing is that introducing unit tests doesn't change this feedback loop on creating software. We still write code and test it, but instead of doing it manually, we use computers, right? So, let's focus why they do not write tests. They will tell you why. And then if we know why, then we can, think, okay, how we can change that. Maybe they need some training. Maybe they simply need time for unit tests. Because again, to this day, many businesses says, we don't need unit tests. We don't want you to invest in TDD because, our clients paying us for writing code, not writing tests. But let me ask you that. If you're going to a doctor because you've got massive pains and you gotta go to emergency surgery, do you care if the doctor will wash their hands or not?
Of course I do.
Well, yeah, you do, but you probably would like him to, come on, guys, start, right? I feel in pain. But they will wash their hands because it's a part of their ethic.
Yeah.
And as a software developers, we do not have this ethic. We think, well, we've got pretty huge egos, and we think we can do a lot. We're smarter and better, and but we still do mistakes. We gotta, close our ego in a small jar and unlearn stuff. Start writing tests. Probably we need some additional time to do it. Right?
Yeah, probably. Thank you for that. And talking about challenges and ego, there's a challenge for you, Arek. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the comment was, I challenge that statements on Agile architecture. In my eyes, Agile architecture exists, but it's all about how we do architecture, not what architecture is. Could you please comment on that?
Interesting thing, how we do architecture. Well, we can understand it in different ways. We can, back in the days, we used to write UML diagrams. That's how we did the architecture. Right now, we're using post-it notes. That's how we do architecture right now. But actually, architecture is thinking about the product, about requirements, about bits and pieces of application and how they work together. And you cannot think about one architecture that will, or one framework for creating it, because you do not know what kind of requirements you will get. And let me share a story like from our company. We do need a way of creating unique numbers for packages. And that's pretty straightforward, right? Because you simply start counting like 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on, right? Simple, yeah, sure. But in our case, we handle like next year we plan to handle 500 million packages in a year. So
Wow.
it makes things a bit more challenging. And the even more challenging thing is that Our application will be used both online and offline. Some of our clients are working offline, and they do want to create unique package numbers while being offline, and some others while being online, right? And with that huge volume, we need to scale everything up. So there are no computers that could handle such a load that we have to deal with on an everyday basis.
Yeah.
So we do need to use Kubernetes and multiple instances of application that actually gives you yet another number that is, super unique. And we do need to guarantee that uniqueness. And we cannot store those numbers in database, because then we've got one single point of failure, right? And one point that will be holding us back. So in that super simple case, generating yet another unique number, we needed to use Kubernetes. We needed to use sharding of numbers. And the funny thing is that we had to actually limit ourselves to certain amount of digits, right? Those are our external requirements. If I would tell you, give me an architecture for unique numbers, unique number generators, then you would end up with either single digit and adding one before sending it out, or we would use something like Twitter Snowflake, or that's how the library is called. Anyways, in our particular case, we had to blow our architecture up to in various ways just to meet our own requirements. So, architecture in software development, it's a tedious and continuous process.
And there is additional comment to that in Slack. The comment is, there is a thin line between chaotic approach to architecture with no principles behind it and adapting the high-level design of architecture as product development progresses. Do you agree?
So, absolutely. The line is super thin. And because it is so thin, we got to take care of this architecture on daily basis. Let me say it again. We got to take care of our architecture on daily basis. Architecture is not something we design up front. It's not one and only so-called agile architecture. And, we simply got to take care of it every day. It's like gardening, right? You can design your garden and, plant the trees and stuff, but eventually you got to trim those bushes and trim the other bushes. And, some plants do not like other plants. You have to garden, right? And you got to do it continuously.
Yeah, I do. Okay, so I think we have space for the last one question, and this is a difficult one. The question is, what is your experience about non-technical Scrum Masters? Are they really so bad?
No, I wouldn't say they're so bad. And you see, there are Scrum Masters and there are Scrum Masters. There are no good technical Scrum Masters. Why? Because if you take the best programmer in your team and you will make him a Scrum Master, he's going to be the poorest Scrum Master ever. Why? Because he will be tending to solve problems. If we take a Scrum Master with no technical knowledge and that person tries to, help the team with technical issues, the team will, they will stop believing that person. They will try to move this Scrum Master as far as they can. So good Scrum Master, in my opinion, is something like a coach. It does understand the processes, but doesn't have to know all the bits and pieces, right? You have to know what the CI/CD is, but it doesn't mean that you have to know how to install Jenkins and integrate it with Kubernetes and all the latest technologies. You got to work with the people and try to help them. Sometimes try to facilitate them. Sometimes simply listen to them. and encourage them to solve their own problems, because developers know how to solve their own problems. Sometimes they simply need some encouragement. So it doesn't mean that if you're technical, you're going to be good or bad software Scrum Master. It doesn't mean that if you're not technical, you're going to be good or bad Scrum Master.
Yeah,
good Scrum Master has good people skills. That's, that's in my opinion, the essence.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Arek. That was a big pleasure to have you at AgileByExample. Thank you for your talk. Thank you for a conversation. And you said that you will be available for a moment in dedicated chat for your talk. I put the link to the chat in the Slack. So please continue conversation with Arek if you wish to. But right now, I invite you for the 5 minutes break. After the break, we will have a talk by Edyta Ryszkiewicz-Tum, Try It Yourself, Back to Development. So stay tuned. And see you in 5 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. It was an honor to be with you, and see you in real life.